Hey y'all, Chelsea and Danny here.
Enjoy this episode of Today's Homeowner here on YouTube.
This week we'll show you how to paint almost any surface you may have around your home.
Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Real projects for real homeowners with real solutions. Information and inspiration on improving your home from professional remodeler Danny Lipford.
Welcome to the show this week. Now, painting is one of the projects that a lot of homeowners feel comfortable taking on themselves. Now, you probably know how to paint walls or ceilings or some of the trim around your home, but do you know the proper way of painting ironwork or metal or aluminum, maybe even plastic that you have around the home? Well, this week we'll show you how to paint all of these surfaces, and along the way give you some great tips on how to make all your paint jobs go a little easier. Stay with us. Welcome back to the show. Now, regardless of what surface you may be painting around your home, you need to make sure that it's thoroughly clean and thoroughly dry before you apply any paint to the surface. Now, if you have an exterior like this, one of the best ways to clean the surface is to use a pressure washer. Pressure washer is fairly inexpensive, or it can be rented from a rental center and allows you to really blast away any of that dirt and grime that may be on the outside of your house. Then once it's dry, you may consider speeding up the process by using a paint sprayer. Now, there's a lot of different paint sprayers out there, including those special kind that are used to spray paint cars, but we're going to focus on residential sprayers, starting with one of the easiest ones to use, a handheld airless sprayer. Now, this one is fairly inexpensive, running from about $50 to around $100, and the important thing is when you're putting the paint in the canister that you've made sure that the viscosity of that paint is what the manufacturer recommends. So you need to read those instructions. Then you put your paint in the canister and you're pretty much ready to go. Now, on any spraying, if you're doing a fair amount of spraying, you'll need to consider using a respirator as well as some eye protection. Here, we're just doing a little bit of examples for you. Now, a few techniques. First of all, when you're using a sprayer, make sure the tip is the same distance away from the house, and that distance should be around 10 to 12 inches. Also, make sure when you're using it, you're not fanning the paint on there, that you're keeping the sprayer tip running parallel to the wall as you're spraying. Let me show you how this one will work. So you can see on a smaller project, the handheld airless just works great. Now, if you have a larger project in mind, you'll need to step up to a larger airless like this one. Now, this is one like a lot of the commercial painters use when they're painting houses, both interior and exterior, and works pretty much like this one in that it has a pump and it pumps the paint out of a container through a hose and out of the spray tip. Now, this one has a larger pump, therefore a lot more volume of paint can be produced with this sprayer. Now, once it goes through here, of course, and gets into the spray head, it atomizes the paint so that you end up with a nice spray pattern. Let me show you how this one looks. So a lot of paint in a short amount of time. Now, with this increased volume, you also can have more of a chance of overspray. So you may want to take just something as simple as a piece of cardboard like this to protect any of the trim areas that you may be painting up against. And you may have to come back with a paintbrush to do a little bit of touch-up as you're finishing up the project. Now, also, if you're painting around any doors or windows, you may as well just go ahead and take plastic, cover the window and door, wrap some masking tape around it so that you're not having to worry about that while you're spraying around those areas. Now, a lot of volume here, and it may not be perfectly suitable for some of the more delicate projects that you may work on, like staining furniture or painting cabinets or trim on the inside of your house. That's where a special sprayer called an HVLP, or high volume low pressure sprayer, might be just the thing. Now, the thing that's a little bit different about this one than the airless, this uses a pump, whereas this actually uses air created by this turbine within the housing that goes through the hose, picks up the paint, and applies a nice fine mist with very little overspray. Now let me kick this one on. Sounds kind of like a vacuum cleaner, and I'll show you how this one works. So you can see it's considerable less volume that you're actually spraying, but you're able to control it very nicely so that you can take care of a lot of that trim work. And I hear a lot of homeowners using this to paint those kitchen cabinets, to brighten those up a little bit. Now, of course, with any sprayers, you have to make sure that you properly clean the equipment after each use. That way, the next time you use it, it'll be ready to go. So you can check with the manufacturer's instructions on exactly how to clean each one of these. Now stay with us. When we come back, we're going to paint something you may have never thought about painting. That's concrete.
Get ready to review your fix-it list as Danny and home repair expert Joe Trewini show you this week's simple solution. Brought to you by DuPont Tyvek. Build it once, build it right.
Most laundry rooms are fairly small, so the more organized, the better. This is a great idea, putting a shelf up high so that you can store things up high as well as having a place for the finished laundry. But the laundry coming into the laundry room is usually the problem.
You're right, Danny, because most families keep dirty laundry in baskets like this, but what do you do with the baskets? They're often just left on top of the washer or dryer or on the floor, and people can trip over them, which is a problem, particularly in this type of laundry room that connects the garage to the kitchen. Yeah. So we couldn't just leave them on the floor. So what I did is I just built this organizer, which is basically a plywood, half-inch plywood box, and has storage for 5 different baskets if you put one on the top and one on the floor. What that allows you to do is separate and organize your laundry. That basket's for delicates, and here are white clothes.
Towels,
because there are a lot of towels coming out of this family. And finally, just the colored clothes go in the top one.
So just regular half-inch plywood. I noticed, though, that you grooved a lot of these.
Yeah, I used a router to cut a dado across here. It's a 1/4 inch deep, just so the shelf fits in. It really locks it in and holds it up. Now, if you don't have a router, you don't want to go through the trouble of cutting dados, what you can do is just get a 1x2 wooden cleat and just slide it in there and screw it in from the outside, and the shelf can rest on the cleat. In fact, if you use this method, you don't have to fasten the shelves at all because the cleat will hold it up.
Well, I can see where it certainly organized everything. Now, if the kids will just put their clothes in the baskets instead of on the floor. Almost every home has some type of masonry surface, whether it's a driveway or a garage floor, or maybe the exterior of your home is brick, block, or stucco. Now, you can successfully change the color of the brick, block, or stucco, but first you have to seal up the pores of this masonry surface. Now, you can do this by using a masonry sealer, and it can be applied with a brush, a roller, or one of the airless sprayers we mentioned earlier can be used to spray this primer or sealer on the brick, block, or stucco. Now, after that, then you can come back with an acrylic latex paint and paint it almost any color that you want. But now, when you're talking about a garage floor like this, you want something that will really hold up to all of the vehicles running over it all the time. So we're suggesting, instead of painting a garage floor, to use a concrete stain. And that's just what we're about to do with this garage. Now, the first thing we did is to completely clean the surface of the floor. We swept the floor first, then mixed up a solution of TSP, which is trisodium phosphate, and water. Then we used a stiff scrub brush to clean the garage floor with the solution, and then thoroughly rinsed it off. Now, if you're cleaning in a carport or an open porch, you could use a pressure washer to speed up this process. With our garage floor clean, we're ready to start staining. Now, the stain that we selected is one that'll match very closely with some of the existing walls. It's kind of a bluish gray color, but there's so many different colors that are available in concrete stain, ranging from very subtle color that you can hardly even see a difference in the concrete to very bold colors of red and green. but this should work out great with trying to match up with a little bit of the color we have around us here. Now we'll be applying the stain using a brush around the perimeter and then rolling on the 2 coats that we'll need to apply on the main part of the garage floor. First thing we're going to do is use a little blue painter's tape to kind of cover some areas that we don't want to stain. I begin by masking off the baseboards around the perimeter of the garage. Then I establish a line with a chalk box at the garage door that'll serve as my stopping point. Now by masking along the chalk line, I'll create a clean line for the stain to stop right at the garage entry. You know, the masking tape will really make it easy when I start trimming around with the stain around the perimeter of the garage. I also use some of the masking tape around my shoes so that while I'm rolling and painting, I don't have to worry about messing up a pair of shoes. Now, we'll be using a paintbrush, a 3-inch brush around the perimeter, and then a roller frame and a handle so I'm not having to bend over while I'm putting on the majority of the stain out in the middle of the floor. Now, after stirring the stain up here, I'll put a little in the roller pan or roller tray. Then I'll use the rest of the can to paint around the perimeter. I'm painting a 2 to 3 inch band of stain along the edge of the wall. Now at the back wall, I'm also applying the stain to the concrete step up to help it blend into the rest of the floor. Then I'm ready to roll on the rest of the first coat. Now the stain I'm using is a silicone acrylic stain that the manufacturer recommended for this type of application and has to be stirred throughout the whole process to make sure the color pigment stays consistent. Now when you're rolling it on, it's important to roll on a nice even coat, avoiding making any puddles and smoothing out any roller marks as you go along. For the first coat, I'll roll the stain in one direction, and for the second coat, I'll apply it in the opposite direction. Well, that really didn't take that long, less than an hour to roll out and to paint all the stain on for the first coat. Now I'll need to let it dry overnight or approximately 12 hours before I put my second coat on. Now, it only took a little more than 1 gallon, so my second coat will use up the second gallon, cost between $20 and $25 per gallon. So when you think about it, $50 for the materials made a big difference on this project. And when we come back, we'll look at how to paint metal, aluminum, and even plastic.
Now let's join Danny at the Home Center to check out the best new products. Brought to you by the Home Depot.
Nobody wants a snake in their house unless you have a clogged plumbing drain. Then the plumber snake, which is a drain cleaning tool, may be your best friend. Now there's a variety of different snakes that are available in the home center, ranging from a $6 model right up to over $100, and it depends on the quality of the particular snake that you buy and the length of the snake as to the overall cost. But usually they will have a shaft like this that extends out into the drain, and then a crank of some kind so that you can agitate the clog to free up the drain. But after a few hours of cranking this, which may require you to extend the snake into the drain, back out, and work it a little bit, your hands can get fairly tired, so Rigid came up with what they call the power spin. It still can be used manually, just like the others, and has a nice comfortable handle to allow you a little more ease of use. But when your hands get tired or you want to make it a little easier, you can clip off the handle and attach your drill right to the shaft that's right here on the end of it. Now you need to use either a rechargeable type drill, a cordless drill, or a corded drill, but it needs to be variable speed as well as reversible so that if you're having to go in and out of that drain a few times, you'll be able to do that with the drill. Now this whole unit with everything here cost a little bit less than $30, which is fairly inexpensive considering a plumber's charge or a drain cleaning company will charge you a lot more than that. Welcome back to the show. Now it's time to talk about painting any metal, steel, or iron that you may have around your home, like this little section of handrail that we've taken off the front porch. Now you may have a steel gate at your home, or you may have an iron post with a light on top, or maybe even a mailbox, but all of them are approached in the same manner. The enemy, rust. You've got to get rid of the rust before you can successfully paint any of these surfaces. Now, in removing rust, like on a section like this, certainly it's easier if you can take it down from its location and bring it to some sawhorses, and you can use a regular hand type of steel brush like this. It'll really do pretty well in getting most of the rust off, but naturally takes a little more time than you need to. I really prefer using a Cordless drill, so useful around the house, and with the little steel brush attachment, really gets the job done quick. The wire brush wheel attacks the rust and loose paint to get it out of the way. Pay careful attention to corners and joints to remove any rust that may be there. When the bulk of the rust is gone, I go over the surface with a piece of medium grit sandpaper, and after that, I wipe it down with mineral spirits to remove the dust. Then I apply a coat of rust inhibiting primer over the entire rail section. Now with our primer all dry, we can start applying our top coat or finish coat. Now we'll be applying several different layers so that we get a gradual buildup for the final coat. Now we're using gloss black, which is what a lot of ironwork seems to be around most homes, and it's important that you pick a good quality spray paint and one that's made for metal or ironwork. Also, it's important to remember some of the techniques we talked about earlier in the show in making sure that you're keeping the spray nice and consistent and very light and parallel to the surface that you're applying it to. Also, you need to shake the can thoroughly before you spray anything at all on. Well, that's our first coat complete. We'll let it dry a little bit before we put our next few coats on. Now, one thing around your home that you might not have ever thought about painting is plastic. There's a lot of it around most homes today. You may have a plastic mailbox or patio furniture out on your deck that you'd like to change color. Or in our case, we have some brand new shutters here that we couldn't find the color that the homeowners wanted, so we decided to paint these. Now, in the past, trying to paint plastic was rarely successful because it wouldn't adhere to plastic, and eventually it would wear off and flake off in big sheets. Or it's just applying it got to be a problem because of drips or runs. Well, now there's a new paint called Fusion that actually is formulated to paint plastic. Now, it's fairly easy to use, but again, you want to put on light coats and put on a number of them. This particular paint sprays an extremely fine mist, so multiple thin coats are even more important here. Because of the way it's formulated, it can be recoated in as little as 30 seconds. So even though you're applying several coats, the job still goes quickly. Now, the spray paint also dries completely in 15 minutes and can be handled after an hour. Just think of all those plastic things you have around the house that now you can give a new look to. Now, whether you're spraying shutters or spraying handrails or whatever, you need to be careful of any overspray, and also always spray paint in a well-ventilated area, outside if possible. Speaking of outside, next, our Around the Yard.
Now let's go outside for Around the Yard with Danny and lawn and garden expert Tricia Craven-Worley. Brought to you by TimberTech Composite Decking. Less work, more life.
Boy, I love the edging material that you've selected here, Tricia. It really goes with the house well.
Oh, thanks, Danny. This is a really nice stone look that works well with the bricks.
There's so many different kinds of edging, though. You go through the garden center and you just see a number of different kinds there.
There are a lot of different choices. One really popular kind is the plastic bender board that uses the stakes,
Right.
and another is the more flexible rubber kind that has kind of like a little rubber edge on
Right,
the very
seen that.
top.
Uh-huh.
And then one that's really nice for a formal look is simply doing a brick paver along an edge.
Okay, but how deep do you normally put edging? Do you protrude it up a good bit, or you try to keep it flush? What's the best?
Well, it really depends on what kind of edging you're using, but in most instances you definitely have to put it below the ground level to support it. And then if you want to be supporting something out here, then you want it a little bit higher.
Okay, now what are the advantages, though? I mean, these homeowners have not had any edging, looks like forever, so why even go through the effort of putting any edging in?
There are so many benefits, but some that come to mind. The first one is if you use a weed trimmer, you have this nice solid edge that you can go against. Also mowing, it's a very clear line. It also will support the material that you have in your bed. And finally, it's a beautiful, beautiful frame for your beds.
Now that certainly looks a lot better than the old rusty railings we were dealing with a few minutes ago. Now, we really packed a lot in this show and hopefully been able to share with you some things that you can really use around your home, like painting handrails like that, or maybe making your garage floor look as good as this homeowner's. And hopefully some of the tips on how to use some of the spray equipment will help you with future projects. We even looked at how to paint plastic. Well, I'm Danny, and I hope you enjoyed this week's show. We'll see you soon.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner. And don't forget to comment, like, and hit the bell icon so that we can notify you when new videos are posted.
And don't go anywhere, click around and continue the home improving fun.